what I do with clients is like, let's not try to completely transform your entire life. Let's just do the little thing right now that's going to do the little thing tomorrow and the little thing tomorrow and the little thing. And that adds up to like, and that's kind of how I thought about the business. Like, I'm afraid of this big thing, but maybe I can post this one thing on LinkedIn that I feel pretty confident on.
Totally.
But I can't do that big thing yet. So it's just like little bit. You talk about this.
Yes, that is my number one of my top pieces of advice for breaking through fear is back it off, right? Back away from the big thing you're scared of until you find the smaller thing that you can do. And then just go do it, because action cures fear.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Erin Marcus, former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I have my guest today, Eric Reiners, who I've been enjoying chatting about because he's newer. I'm going to tease you. He's newer on having left corporate more recently. And as everybody knows, that's my story. I still have dreams. I still have nightmares. I still have flashbacks. I still have all the things, right? And I have a special place in my heart for people who leave really significant positions in corporate and go out on their own. So I can't wait for them, for everybody to hear your story. And before we get into that, though, why don't you give everybody a little more formal introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, awesome, Erin. Thanks for having me. I love your podcasts, and I've been listening in on a few and learned some things from you, quite a few things on my journey. And so thanks for being a gracious host and a good friend.
Thank you.
So I'm Eric Reiners. I started a company called Be Well Innovation, and what we do is help corporate athletes get more joy, meaning, and impact out of their lives. And we do that with a combination of sports science and neuroscience. And then I've got a background as a corporate executive that I kind of bring in my practical experience there and really just help people that are typically high performers really enjoy the richness of life and enjoy it while they're in it and not just chase that next thing, which is kind of what I was doing. But that's in a nutshell what I do.
That's perfect. You know, one of the things you said, enjoy it while you're in it. And I think one of the challenges for any high achiever is we're just always looking to what's the next thing. And we have this idea that the reward comes at some point. But when is that point?
Right. It doesn't exist.
No.
There's no future state that will give you that. Is kind of what I'm learning, at least on this path. And like, I was a products guy, so I worked in cybersecurity and I was a CIO, and then I left my career as a CIO, and I was working with really amazing people on really cool stuff, great customers, growing business and market. And I got to a point where I was just like, is this it? Like, is this all there is? And that was kind of middle-age crisis time too. I'm 50.
I had that same thing. Really? Is this how this works?
Is this it? And I was driven by dopamine. Like, I loved launching new products. And but you know what you said is true. Like, you don't get the same, you actually get the enjoyment before you get the achievement. And so our brains actually reward us in anticipation of that thing.
Yes.
And so then when you get to the finish line, you're like, oh God, now I got to find something harder and more difficult. And
everything so feels very anticlimactic.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Yeah, exactly. And so it leads to this kind of dissatisfaction, and like they're like, what is missing? And so that's kind of what I help with, is try to help get that back. Like, how did you feel when you first started your company? Or how did you feel when you were a kid or on that sports team, that the stuff that you love doing, like, get that feeling back every day is kind of what the goal is. So.
No, I love it. I think, the word that keeps coming to mind is presence, right? How do you live with presence? I use intention, but I think that has a very different connotation versus what you're talking about, is living with presence and being and choice, right? Choosing to have the good time now instead of chasing it.
I think you wrote, like, one of your podcasts was like, this is fun. Remind yourself.
Right? Oh my I did that. I said
fun.
that yesterday. Like, this is supposed to be fun. I did that yesterday. I was interviewed yesterday on a podcast for Australia, and it was like their whole theme is the top 5, right? The top 5 this, the top 5 that. And so the top 5 I did was the top 5 ways to conquer your business. And the last one I said is like, dude, have fun. Like, I didn't quit the fancy job with the expense account to be miserable.
Yeah. And helping entrepreneurs on this journey is really important because, like, well, I can tell you a little bit. My journey was, I planned pretty well. Like, I'm a planner, I'm an operator. Like, you can do all the planning, but you cannot do the psychological transformation until you're in it. And like,
no, you cannot think your way out of that.
Yeah, you can't plan all that stuff. No. Like, you just have to go through it. And if you're not present with it, you might be avoiding and like not actually engaging in what really the work that needs to be done, the work before you go to work.
Before you go to work. But you said something interesting that just struck me a little bit differently, because as much as I plan, and I plan all sorts of things, I'm very much action oriented. I figure out what's needs to happen by doing, though there is always a reverse engineered goal in mind. And as I'm listening to you talk about being a planner and being an operator, and then this realization that you can't think your way through transformation, that's got to be horrifying. Now that I mean, I never really thought about it that way because I think the way I think, but for someone who likes to plan ahead, it's got to be horrifying when you realize you can't do that.
That's actually, the uncertainty. I worked in cybersecurity, which is highly uncertain and ambiguous and complex. So I got used to the not having the answer to stuff, which kind of helped a lot. But you're right, like, to know when you've laid out a plan and then like, oh, my clients didn't arrive in March. I was expecting as an entrepreneur, like, oh,
I'm gonna quit my job, the sky would open. The
revenue is not there yet. Those are things that you have to deal with in the moment and be present with them and accept them and not ignore them and process them and do the right emotional and spiritual and whatever psychological work you need to do to learn from it and move on. And sometimes we're moving so quickly and chasing the next objective or achievement that we kind of miss all those little signals on the way that might have told us something different.
Those blind spots. And I had a situation today where I asked a question, and the answer that I was given was something that I've known, taught, ingrained for years, and I could have kicked myself because it was like, I've learned to be curious about that. Why was this a blind spot? If I know it so well, why was it a blind spot? I can only imagine having it be more recent for you. Like, what has been some of the most shocking blind spots or shocking experiences leaving that corporate world?
Good question. Like, if I kind of think about my journey, it's only been almost 6 months now. So I'm pretty early, maybe, compared to some of your other folks that have been on the podcast. But it's been a really good learning journey in those 6 months. And like the first
month, still a novel idea for you.
I'm still like, oh, this is amazing. It still feels a little like vacation. But anyway, that first month was like waking up. I can tell you the feeling of waking up, and you know this feeling. You wake up without email, corporate email, Slack, or anything else on your phone, and there are no obligations for you, at least in the corporate world. Your family is your obligation, that kind of stuff. That was such a good feeling, and that wore off after a while. That kind of like
that goes from, oh my God, this is amazing, I have nothing to do, to like, wait a minute, I have nothing to do.
It lasted about a week. And then it's like, okay, I looked around, and the first month was beautiful. I spent a lot of time just like taking care of myself, reawakening my body a little bit, walking the dog, picking the kids up from school, that kind of stuff. It was amazing. And then the second month was like, oh shit, what have I done? Oh my God. And the doubt crept in, and there's like, I gotta get this going now. I'm gonna start this business, and I'm gonna do this thing. And I'd already actually started the corporation, and already had some testing and did some concepts and MVPs and stuff like that. But it was time to get working, and it was time to start. And then I futzed around with the website for a long time, and I dealt with all the administrative stuff that didn't really achieve any kind of like customer outcome at all.
You can just say anything, period, hard stop.
I did all the stuff that was not customer related, which I know as a product guy, that's the wrong thing to do. So, and then March, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to book as many calls as I possibly can. And I got introduced to a bunch of, and I used my network and I started doing, 10 to 15 hours of calls a week with people, amazing, founders and executives, and really, and testing the concept. And I started really zoning in on this, like, who's my customer, and just collecting and practicing the craft of coaching and consulting. And that was super rewarding. But I was putting it off. Like I was like on the opposite side of doing the work before you go to work. I was doing all the work and not actually going to work.
Not actually going to work. Yes.
But in terms of like the learnings, like I definitely had I thought that the revenue would come sooner. I thought there would be a built-in market. I felt like people would reach out to me instead of me having to source.
And I will tell you, and you know this, but like I think client acquisition is people don't understand how hard it is. Right? People do not understand how complicated, how hard, what a moving target client acquisition is, because sales in general is the part of our business that bumps up against every limiting belief, every money story, every childhood trauma, right? The situation of asking another human for money when you are the product. Like I did big fancy sales in corporate, but I wasn't the product.
Yeah, now you're the face and the name.
Man, that hit you from every direction you don't even see coming.
And you've given good advice on this, and I love how you think about it. It's like I had good coaching that helped me sit in the client's perspective a little bit and understand, okay, what would I want to hear? And so I started practicing that, and I worked in sales for a couple of years. Like I sold software, and that was easier to do than just asking for, a coaching hourly rate, which is me showing up and being present and giving you my best. So yeah, I hear you. And I'm still working through that journey for sure. Like I think every entrepreneur has some sort of that journey in their path.
Yeah. And I think truthfully, for those of us in a role where there's coaching involved, the things you learn about yourself and the things you learn about humans and how humans work in the process of getting better at that yourself becomes invaluable to your clients. Right? It's part of, sure, you have your method and you have your goal, but the more you can become aware, right? The more self-aware you are, and the more objectively self-aware you are, free of judgment, the more you can then give that to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Ready Yet podcast, brought to you by Conquer Your Business. With decades of experience, Conquer Your Business creates business and branding strategies that build multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses. And we don't just show you what to do. We have an entire team of people available to help you do it, strategy and implementation. You can learn more and reach out to us by visiting conqueryourbusiness.com.
I was going to say, what has been your most amazing, never saw this coming, this is, didn't expect this to be part of it, this is so cool. What has been your surprise bonus of this whole situation?
That's a good question. I'd kind of intellectually thought through, I'm a planner, right? So I think, well, it'll be nice to have this free time and to spend the space and the time. And then I realized that was actually just another, it was a blocker actually for me. Yeah. I actually was so ingrained in having a calendar that was full and busy and had meetings with vendors and partners and customers and staff and all that stuff, that I just really struggled with that. Like the learning for me was I thought I was actually quite inefficient and not very productive. So I had to recreate that structure all over again, which I didn't think I'd have to do. I thought, I'll just drop in and I'll just have these 3 hours. I'll be able to do all this stuff.
Yeah, I had that also. The horrible truth that I learned, 2 things. Well, one's a horrible truth and one just is, you have this successful background. I have this successful corporate background. There's this external validation. There's I was so amazing. I was so amazing. How hard could this be? Look at me. I was so amazing. Right. And then the reality hits that the truth is you were amazing on a very narrow path that somebody else created.
Surrounded by a bunch of amazing people doing a bunch of great things for you. And like, you have none of that when you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, at least. And you have to
Then
create
you don't
that.
feel so amazing, right? You don't feel so amazing anymore.
And the pile of work is still there. You need to do a bunch of stuff to launch a business and acquire clients and stuff. But if you don't build that, well, at least for me, I kind of had to build the structure. So
I think anybody, absolutely.
Yeah. And that really helped me a lot to like feel like I'm going to work now. I also paid myself a salary. So it felt like I took some savings and said, okay, this is going to be my salary for the first 6 months. And that made me feel like that was helping me through the psychological, leaving the salary and all that stuff.
Well, in trading, I think the other thing that does, by creating a structure, and I mean, this is exactly, in my opinion, you're on the right path, because by creating the structure and by giving yourself the salary, what you've done is you've separated yourself from the business. And now Eric is an asset of the business. Which also makes you treat the business like a business, not a hobby, not this thing I'm trying to do, not this, hey, this would be cool, but a business, a company. Run it like a company.
That's really good. Yeah.
And
I took my IT background and my product background, and I started building the spreadsheets and like how we know we're successful and all the KPIs and all that stuff. That I had goals and that actually helped create some structure. And by the way, I was totally undervaluing and underestimating what I could do in the first year. It was a slower start, but now that it's ramping, I was actually pretty far off. And so I have to adjust now, which is great because I can just tweak this number and then boom, I can go after a different goal. But doing the work for me, it was like I had to do the work instead of just planning the work. I had to actually get in there and actually do it, which sounds super, super simple.
Well, it sounds so silly, but at the same time, it's not like you're someone who didn't want to do, like, this is a really good example, because here you are, you're not someone who doesn't want to work. And I think that's one of the things that shocks people. You self-identify, right? Those of us who do this, we self-identify as hard workers. Well, if I'm such a hard worker, why am I not doing the work? Why am I planning the work? Right. And it messes with you. And that's where the doubt creeps in.
I thought you were going to say that. Yeah. That's the hard part. And a lot of it is confidence, like getting the reps really, really helps. And I do a 1 hour free coaching conversation with anybody that wants to come to my site. And that gives me, I just learn so much. I show up with curiosity. I don't know who's going to show up, and I do very little research, and I just show up with curiosity and equanimity, and I try to learn as much as I can and ask questions, and it's absolutely an amazing journey. And then that helped me get the confidence to be able to jump on a call with anybody. So I had to get past these little step curves. And some of what I do with clients is like, let's not try to completely transform your entire life. Let's just do the little thing right now that's going to do the little thing tomorrow and the little thing tomorrow and the little thing. And that adds up to and that's kind of how I thought about the business. I'm afraid of this big thing, but maybe I can post this one thing on LinkedIn that I feel pretty confident on.
Totally.
But I can't do that big thing yet. So it's just like little bit. You talk about this.
Yes. That is my number one of my top pieces of advice for breaking through fear is back it off. Right? Back away from the big thing you're scared of until you find the smaller thing that you can do, and then just go do it, because action cures fear.
Yeah.
Right. That action is what cures fear. Going back to your needing to plan, and the goal is, right, to put bumpers in your gutter so you don't fall off either side. One, you don't want to be the person who's planning and not doing, and two, you don't want to be the person who's doing without planning. Yeah. And it's not a straight line. You just kind of bump your way in between those things down the lane. What I found is I always need to have something to point towards, because I'm basically a balloon. And so if I don't have a string, things get real floaty and real random, right? So that balance between finding, right, planning and acting
Yeah.
you can keep it all moving forward.
You can't plan the things that you've never done before. Like, so
You have no
you
frame of
have to
reference
do
for most
them
of
and
us,
then you can maybe adjust the
right?
plan. But yeah.
I think that's part of the beauty of the entrepreneurial world is not, I don't want to say surprise, but it really is. It's like the surprise bonuses when you talk about underestimating what you can do. And I forget what the quote is.
Undervaluing is also something I learned. Like I was not valuing what I did enough. And that was maybe self-doubt and confidence as well.
Yeah. And I forget what the phrase is. I said, I've turned into my mother and I can't remember quotes anymore, but we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we underestimate
Yeah.
what we can do in a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
it's
love
amazing,
the
those
beginning.
yeah.
I love the beginning of the journeys because I think things change faster in the beginning.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the entrepreneur journeys, they change so fast. And a year in, you're going to look back and go, holy buckets, like in a million years, this isn't what I thought I was going to have. And it's 10 times better.
Yeah, that's promising. That makes it that's but you've talked to so many people. This is like a trend you see, like because
this is absolutely a trend I see.
Yeah, I can see it really easy bailing out. Like my level of how I measure my kind of like, I don't know, my grit and my determinedness is like, did I go to a job board this week and look at jobs? And I haven't done that in a month, and that's getting less and less, and I'm moving, and I'm like believing more and more, and I'm learning more and more, and like it is radically different than what I originally thought based on the beta that I'd done and stuff. And I learned some things from that where like, oh, actually, I don't need to train on grit or coach on grit. Everybody I talk to is already super gritty. So let's just throw that out. But what they really love is active recovery, and everybody needs it. So let's do that more often. And so these are the things like, and the sports science part is like, we expect sports athletes, they train, and maybe perform once a month, and they train, recover. But corporate athletes, and I call them corporate athletes because they're performing, and maybe get a 2-week vacation where they're looking at their email and worried about all the work that's waiting them on the way. So we treat corporate performers differently than how we train athletics. And it's like, okay, what if we actually took some of the concepts from the athletes and said, hey, you're a performer as well. Let's bring some active recovery in. Let's do some rest and relaxation so you can come back and be stronger and better.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I think it's in the book Peak Performance where they talk about they were studying the tennis pros and the faster you can recover, and you think about tennis, it's literally between points. So you're talking seconds, the ability to recover within seconds. The faster you can recover, the better you can perform.
Yeah. And we tend to ignore that in our corporate life. We back-to-back meetings, and then Friday is your day to like catch up on all the stuff because there's no meetings on Fridays.
Right.
And then you enter the weekend exhausted and
but here's the thing. Now you live in California, right? Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. I live in Chicago. In Fridays in summer, we don't catch up on anything because we've got like 4 months, 3 months of weather that may raise.
You're going to enjoy it.
We don't work. Right? Yeah. We don't work on Friday afternoons in the Midwest.
Okay, now I understand.
This is our chance. Right? This is our only chance. We've got like 2.5 months of weather that makes it okay to function outside here. Yes. Yeah.
But that routine, it can get, it leads to burnout, and it leads to stress, chronic stress, and all the things that come along with that. And if you're not careful, that'll sneak up on you. And it did for me for sure. Like, there was probably like a year or so where I just didn't remember anything from my personal life. I had like we shipped a bunch of stuff. We did a bunch of customer outcomes. We grew the business, but I just don't remember much of it. It was just like, and so I chose to say, hey, that's not for me. I'm gonna do something else and really enjoy the richness that's here. So
you've been talking about a little bit about like what you set out to do versus what you're actually doing in response to who you're talking to, right? Which I think is brilliant, right? You got to start somewhere, and your assumptions are usually pretty good. It's why you're doing what you do for a living. Our assumptions are pretty good. And then we use the conversations we have. We use the conversations that we have with the marketplace, with the other humans that we meet, to further develop what it is that we really should be offering. And one of the things that I've been talking about now, and I'm curious what you're seeing in your subject matter right now, people are buying instant solutions to their biggest problems. Like things are weird, things are hard. They're buying the quick solution to their biggest problem. So in terms of the services you provide, what are people saying? I understand burnout, but what is the result of that? Like, what are you seeing that just from a subject matter expertise, even though it's entrepreneur versus corporate, we can kind of head off some pitfalls for some people?
Yeah. So like kind of like tips and practices maybe that. So, well, what I learned, so I used to put active recovery later in the process. I have a program that's 10 weeks and you go through it, and it's over the course of 3 months. And I used to do that later, but what I found is everybody needs it actually. And even if you're pretty well optimized and you're working out, everybody says, hey, I want to be in shape, but we don't do it actually. or we say, I want to spend more time with my kids, but we don't always prioritize it. And we have other things that always fill up our calendar, and then we're exhausted and we don't have the time to do the things for ourselves. And so a lot of it is like really simple, just like, okay, where do you want to be, Erin, in 5 years? How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel physically, emotionally, spiritually? Who do you want around you? What do you want to be known for? Like, what are those tough questions that you maybe not ask if you're in the moment, like just operating? And then we dial it in and say, okay, you want to do that? I think you want to go and take care of baby elephants in Africa at one point. Did I hear that at one point? Okay, that's an amazing thing. That's right. I see the elephants behind you. So
right.
I heard that.
Yeah, the elephants. Yes, we want to get into the wildlife rescue and the absolutely
Awesome.
yes.
So then, okay, that's important to you. Let's go figure that out. Let's go break that. You're going to do the work, of course, and break it down and like get it scheduled and move you towards that best possible self. And so that's one of the things. And then like just spending some time, because most people don't have space to do that. So we just start by carving out. Even the busiest corporate athletes I talk to will find 90 minutes. They're like, I don't have to go to that meeting. I can delegate that one. You know what? I could probably leave work at 5 instead of 7 and free up a couple hours. I don't think the business would fail if I did that. And so we find 90 minutes, and that 90 minutes turns into 6 hours. And that 6 hours is now time for you to recover and to use on the things that you want to use it for. And then, just taking care of yourself from the foundational stuff of sleep and nutrition and exercise and all that stuff. It's a big part of it as well.
And I think as I'm listening to you, that part of it is recognizing that this is not about shirking responsibility, that you can actually be of greater service by doing this.
Yeah. Overworking, actually, you get less output. So what do we do when things aren't going well? We just put more hours in.
Hit it harder.
Hit it harder. Hustle
Hit it harder.
Get it done.
Hit it harder.
And there's limiting returns on that, and it actually falls off a cliff after a while. And so really you got to work. One of the things is I call it surfing your biology. Like, when are you best suited to do the work? I'm a morning person. My wife is a mid-morning, afternoon. And so we work around that and like figure out how we can collaborate during those times when we're best suited to collaborate together. And so if you're aware of that, and sometimes you have obligations that you can't move, but wherever you can, do the hardest work when you're best suited to do the hard work. Yeah. And that's a simple one.
So hard.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's not so hard. And recognizing that, I think too many people don't realize how much control they actually have. Yeah. It's very, very easy to just blame. This is this lawyer culture. This is just corporate culture. Right. It's so easy because as soon as you blame something external, you don't have to take any responsibility.
It's a shared identity too. Like, oh yeah, I know. I feel you. Yeah.
Right. That whole, get around complaining around the water cooler.
Yeah.
And that's actually when I asked you what was one of your biggest surprises. I think for me, coming out of corporate, I was very lucky to have a very collaborative corporate environment. And one of the things I was worried about is not having that as at the time what was a solopreneur, and networking. The networking as this concept was my big entrepreneurial bonus. Like, didn't know that was a thing. Holy buckets, hundreds of people internationally, all just want to help each other, conversations with everybody. That to me was just remarkable. You're getting to learn about people and what are they doing and what am I doing? That was just absolutely remarkable. And the fact that so many of them realize they're just out there creating their reality instead of reacting to somebody else's.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying that you found it easier, or you found it amazing when you were a solopreneur, to the supportive community that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. And it doesn't come to you. You have to.
No. No, you have to go.
Yeah. Whereas in the corporate world, like, people will come to you if you have a title or you have a responsibility. They're going to come to you, and you have the support.
They're not always so supportive.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I worked in a very supportive and collaborative organization as well.
We were collaborative and supportive as well, but it's inherently, and this is probably something that you see with your clients, it's inherently competitive. Only because, not even if it's meant to be, but if there's 100 people on the team and 5 people get to be managers, and then 5 of those, one of those gets to be a supervisor, that's a pyramid. Like, there's no way around if 10 people want the promotion, there just isn't space. So there's a bit of inherent competitiveness that I think drives people, and their end result is ending up in the situation you're describing.
Yeah. Whereas actually out, when you look at the global network of what you're talking about, there's so many people doing amazing things, really cool people, and they're willing to talk about it. And it's like, oh, I didn't know I could reach out to that person. And then let's jump on a call. Let's have a call. And you learn, it's beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's been my absolute favorite surprise about my entrepreneurial journey. So if people want to continue this conversation with you, what is the best way? Because I'm coming out of corporate, I know the necessity of it. And one of the things that's heartbreaking for me is watching people live like this when they don't need to, right? We're not talking about less success. We're not talking about less output. We're talking about probably better success and happier doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Isn't that the point?
The idea is to do it with less effort, get more done, more impactful work done, and do it with joy at the same time, because otherwise you'll miss it. Yeah, while you're in it. Yeah.
Otherwise, what is the point?
What's the point? Yeah.
What's the point?
And I'm learning this, and it works, and it's cool. And to learn more, you can go to bewellmind.org. And then my wife and I created Be Well Innovation, and that is, so can I talk a little bit about future?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Okay, cool.
That'd be awesome.
So this all started with my wife created Be Well Gardens, which is about connecting kids to wellness through nutrition. So helping them grow food, prepare food, and how it connects to their body systems. And it all started because her kids she's a high school public high school teacher, and her kids were eating hot Cheetos for breakfast, and it really bothered her. So she's like,
is that bad?
Hot Cheetos and a Coke. And so it's like, I'm going to start a garden. And that was 17 years ago. And now she's transformed over 100,000 families and lives. And it's amazing. Anyway, I totally stole her idea and said, let's do that for the mind, and let's do it for neuroscience. And so that became that. And then we also have something called Be Well Retreats, which is locations where you can disconnect from your devices and connect with each other and nature. And so we're launching our first retreats this year. So that's awesome. That's kind of the overall approach: nature, nutrition, and neuroscience.
Nature, nutrition, and neuroscience.
Yeah, Eric at bewellmind.org, or just go to the website and you can book a session or a free session. So
yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, like, take advantage of these situations, because I know Eric, I know entrepreneurs, and I know it's going to be real soon where he's not willing to just talk to everybody for free. So just do it now while you get a chance, right? Thank you for sharing your story, your insights, especially, I was teasing you about it before we hit record, that sometimes when we're newer in this journey, we're not as comfortable sharing what's not working, because we think we're supposed to have all the answers. And the beauty of it is, you already kind of know, like, this is a journey and we're all still figuring it out. So thank you for sharing that piece of the puzzle, because we all have to go through it.
Yeah, thank you for having this forum. It's amazing, and for being such a gracious host. You provide a lot to us out here and trying to do this over and over again. Yeah, I
We're
think
all in
your
this together.
wisdom
We
is
are all
very
in this
welcome.
together. Thank you.